Well, I am still trying to wrap my head around exactly what the transfer portal is and how we should feel about it. It's new, it's different, it's not your grandma's college football. Growing up, college football was amazing because, well, for many reasons, college football was amazing, but one of the reasons was you had a 4 year commitment from your player. You knew that once they committed, whether it was early in high school or on National Signing Day, you knew that player was likely yours to be a fan of, to root for, and to watch develop for the next 3 to 5 years. That was set in stone. That was part of the game. You could fall in love with these players, you could watch them develop, you could watch them at the next level. Well, obviously now that has changed. The transfer portal has affected most teams. Whether you're an Aggie, you know it's affected us greatly. Whether you're an opposing team, it affects everybody. It's part of the game now. We're learning to live with it, we're learning to adapt to it, and teams have definitely learned to utilize it to their favor. I think there are a few ways that the transfer portal is best utilized, and I kind of want to make an example of my favorite 5 transfer portal teams coming out of this December transfer portal window. If you didn't know, there are 2 transfer portal windows that are very significant. It's the one leading to spring classes. December, early January, they have to enroll in time to make the spring classes. And then again, in spring, before summer, there will be another window. I don't know how much more fireworks we're going to see in the portal. You might see players that have already transferred transfer again in this spring window based on playing time. It's really weird. It's crazy. And I want to be clear. I'm okay with players seeking greener pastures in terms of playing time. Let's say you're a junior. You don't have a clear path to playing time. You need to make a name for yourself. You need to get yourself showcased to maybe play at the next level, or at least make the most of your college career. And you're maybe buried on a depth chart. Well, I totally understand looking for a slot elsewhere. It makes total sense. What I think kind of sucks about the portal is having mainstays on your team move on after they've been producers for your team, after they've already had a secured roster spot on your team. And of course, every circumstance is different. When a coach leaves, a coach like Nick Saban leaves, obviously, players are going to leave. Players want to be coached by, first of all, the guy that recruited them. Second of all, these high-end coaches. I think the portal is best utilized in 2 ways. One, you are retooling after a coaching exit. Texas A&M lost Jimbo Fisher, fired Jimbo Fisher. With that, the entire coaching staff. Of course, you're going to lose a bunch of players who were recruited by that coaching staff and by Jimbo himself, who wanted to play for that staff, who wanted to play for Jimbo. Maybe had deals with Jimbo, maybe had promises by Jimbo. Maybe things aren't turning out the way they had hoped in their tenure. They're going to move on. It makes total sense. A team in transition should absolutely use the transfer portal to the best of their abilities because you're going to have attrition. It's just part of the game now. You're going to play by the rules that are at hand. The other ideal way to use the portal is to fill in small gaps on your team that could lead you to become a great contender immediately. The transfer portal equals a fast forward button for some programs. Look at Texas. They lost a bunch of wide receivers. I thought that would be the kiss of death for them going forward because with Sark, I think the wide receiver might be the most important position on the team. They lose their 3 best receivers, but they go in the portal and they get like 4 more guys that are high level, maybe the 4 of the best available receivers in the portal. So I think if you just kind of patchwork your team with the portal, you plug and play, I think that's a great way to use the portal too. So like I said, want to highlight my 5 favorite portal classes, maybe the 5 best portal classes. I think I'm pretty nails here. I think I have a good read on it. I'm just kidding. You can look at the top 10 on any server, 247 on 3 Rivals, and you can see how they have them rated. Let's pull up what 247 has as the top classes in the portal this year so far, because there's still a lot of action to happen. So obviously, these are rated by both quantity and quality. Each recruit is worth a certain amount of points, and you can see on that far right corner, actually you can't see, it's kind of cut off, but past the average on that right side of the graphic, there's a score, and that's how they're ranked. So obviously, Ole Miss has had a really, really good portal run. Texas A&M, like I said, filled in a lot of gaps, kind of got a lot of assets to go out there and compete for starting positions. Specifically at defensive back, Texas A&M got like 10-plus defensive backs from the portal this cycle, and that's because Texas A&M lost a bunch of guys in the cornerback room, but also was lackluster there to begin with. So they both addressed a need and got a bunch of players to fill in gaps. We'll look at the classes in a second. Florida State also had to address a bunch of needs. You guys saw their, skeleton crew versus Georgia, and that wasn't going to cut it next year, so they went ahead and added a bunch of guys. So let me go ahead and give you my top 5 favorite classes. But first, if you guys could like and subscribe to this channel, that would help me greatly. I'm trying to grow this thing, bring more fans like you into the discussion, whether you're an Aggie, an opposing fan base. We have a lot of fun talking to everybody in the comments. I have a live show that's usually on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central. This week, I'm actually moving the live show to Thursday at 8 p.m. I have an obligation on Wednesday. So if you guys want to come, you can call in. We can talk college football live on YouTube one-on-one. We have a lot of fun there. So like and subscribe. Let's look at these classes. All right, so these are not in any particular order. I think I have 2 that I would indicate as the most ideal scenario for the portal, 2 or 3. And then I have 2 that are really, really good depictions of how you can use the portal after attrition to your roster, whether it's players going pro or players leaving due to a coach exodus, because those are 2 obvious major reasons you can need to retool your roster. I mean, Florida State. Let's start with Florida State. Florida State had a bunch of players go pro and a few players transfer. Their entire receiver core did not play in the bowl game. They lost Jordan Travis. They lost Jared Verse. They lost a bunch of players. So they go out there, definitely took advantage of the Nick Saban leaving Bama situation, and signed a great class. So let's look at Florida State. Obviously, they set a really high bar for themselves this year. Mike Norvell has actually built that thing up from the ground. Many Florida State fans will say that Jimbo left the program in rubble, in ashes, whatever you want to say. He left it in a pretty bad spot with the recruiting classes and the structures he left in place when he left. It's been a long rebuild for Florida State, and they finally found themselves back at the pinnacle of college football this year with an undefeated ACC championship year. But with the departure, unfortunately, of Jordan Travis happening earlier than expected due to injury, their chances of the playoff diminished, obviously, because they didn't make it for that reason. So because of that, they had a bunch of opt-outs. They had a lot of players going pro anyways. They had a lot of attrition for all of their mainstays on their roster. Leading rusher, all 3 starting receivers gone. Jared Verse, a lot of defensive guys. Their backup running back. I mean, they lost a lot. And obviously Jordan Travis himself. So in the portal, they addressed every need. I mean, you can see they got Roydell Williams. They definitely took advantage of Nick Saban's departure at Alabama. They got their quarterback. They get the experienced DJ Uiagalelei. And whether you think he's great or not, he's a guy that can step in and run an offense. And if you put the right system around him, who knows what he could be. He was rated high out of high school. We've seen the tools. We've seen it versus Notre Dame his, I think, freshman year in the COVID year. It's been a long time, but we know there's some fuel in the DJ tank. I'm skeptical about DJU. But they addressed everything, and they did it at the highest possible level. You go back and you can see, I mean, star ratings are one thing, but they got 10 4-star players, and you can see the quality of player just within the graphic I showed you previously. So I think Florida State should be considered a massive success in the portal this year. They had immediate needs that were addressed in the portal, and now they have a chance to contend for the ACC, which is, as usual, wide open going into 2024. Another team in a similar boat to Florida State, my team, our team, if you're an Aggie, Texas A&M. Now, obviously, this is the case of coaching departure leading to a bunch of depletion within the roster. Lose a bunch of D linemen. Pretty much 3 out of your 4 starting D linemen are gone. You lose a wide receiver. You lose a bunch of corners, and that wasn't a position that we were really holding on to that firmly because it was a weak position. Texas A&M goes out and they get probably the best defensive end class in the portal, adding Nick Scorton out of Purdue, the leading sack man out of the Big Ten, and Cassius Howell, another 10-plus sack guy out of Bowling Green. Texas A&M targeted a bunch of upperclassmen from G5 schools that were looking to take it to the next level where there was opportunity. And where there was opportunity in the SEC this year was at Texas A&M due to coaching departures. So this is not only filling an immediate need at corner and defensive end, this is also just filling out your roster with quality upperclassmen that you weren't going to have because of departures. The team that remained at A&M is also a veteran team. So you add more veterans to the mix. You get a lot of high-profile guys. You get a lot of corners to throw at the room that was very, very lackluster last season. Defensive ends that you needed, strong side ends that you needed. Texas A&M still needs to do some more work in the portal, maybe get some defensive tackles and wide receivers. But this is a great ideal start to a new coach tenure after the attrition you see with a coach departure. Now, I'm going to move on to 3 teams, and I don't think many Aggies are going to be happy with me highlighting these 3 teams, but I do think that the next 3 teams I'm going to talk about are actually the ideal. They actually use the portal in the ideal way. Now, of course, you have to use the portal if you're in Florida State or Texas A&M scenario. You got to fill the roster, and you did it with quality players. The ideal way to use the portal is where you don't have this turnover, but you do have positional needs, and you fill them in with very high-quality assets. So like I said, probably not going to be the happiest with this first team that I highlight, but I think they did a great job, and I'm going to call it how I see it. I think Texas did exactly what they needed to do in the portal. Texas lost their 3 leading receivers, and they filled it in with 3 elite producers from Power 5 schools. Obviously, Isaiah Bond was a huge get out of Bama. I do think the 5-star rating on Isaiah Bond is a little bit ambitious. I feel the same way about Evan Stewart. I don't know if these receivers are necessarily 5 stars, but I don't know. The whole transfer portal rating system is new to me. It's new to the world of college football. Maybe he's a 5-star asset. But if you're Texas, you can't complain. When you lose A.D. Mitchell, Jatavion Sanders, and Worthy, and you fill it in with Amari Niblack, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, who was a very highly sought-after receiver out of Houston, had a great season. And then you also add Silas Bolden, who was another 700-yard-plus receiver out of Oregon State, who has been very successful recently. I don't think you can complain, and I think this is exactly what a team like Texas needed. I have to be consistent. I have been saying that I thought Texas was going to fall off sharply because they lose all of their offensive weapons. Just like I thought Alabama would fall off this year, and they kind of did statistically. They still made it to the playoff. But I didn't think Bama was going to be typical Bama because they lacked those offensive weapons in a system that was so used to having high-end receivers. Well, Texas lost their receivers, and they fill them in right away. And with Sark, you get skilled receivers. He's going to make it work. So you address an immediate need, and you make yourself, I don't know if I want to call Texas a contender yet, but you make yourself much more respectable by filling in exactly what you needed. So I have to give kudos to Texas. They did that, and they not only did that, they got a really good edge guy. They got Makuba out of Clemson. They got some really good dudes in the portal. I have to give credit where it's due, and Texas did a great job. And, of course, another school with another small transfer portal class who didn't necessarily need a major overhaul, Ohio State absolutely destroyed the portal, and it happened late. Caleb Downs, I don't know about you guys, but it shocked the hell out of me. I thought that guy was a Georgia lock. I thought he was going to follow T-Rob. I thought he was going to follow one of the teams in the footprint of where he's from. But no, he goes up to Ohio State, and Ohio State also got the number 1 incoming quarterback from Bama, who immediately transferred after Nick Saban left. Now, all of a sudden, Ohio State has a collection of dudes that will all likely have a chance to play for their team right away. I don't think Ohio State necessarily immediately addressed any particular need because they have players everywhere. They're going to have a good defense next year. I don't know if any of these quarterbacks move the needle next year. Will Howard, that's debatable. I mean, he's a body to throw in there to compete for the job. That's a positive. You want that. But just the overall talent that was acquired to a team that didn't necessarily have any holes, the fact that you didn't fill your roster with bread when you didn't need to, I think this is great. I think this is exactly where you want to be in the transfer portal. You don't want to have to go get 20-plus guys if you don't have to. They didn't have to, so they filled it up with quality. So I think Texas and Ohio State, they're examples of how the portal should be used. Now, as an Aggie, I hope that's where we are a couple years into Mike Elko's system. First year, go get your bodies. Go get quality dudes. That's exactly what they did. Great. But once you're in year 2 and 3, I would like to see these 10 or fewer portal classes just with quality dudes who want to come play for this team that is having success. Players want to come play for the team. That's where you want to be. So 2 different ways you can use the portal. Now, a pretty unique one is Ole Miss. I think they just went out and stacked as much talent as possible because they have a really interesting situation where they have a bunch of players returning. The team outlook looks really positive going into next year. It's a team that's likely going to contend for an SEC championship. And because of that, you're able to go out there and pitch that I think players like Lane Kiffin, it's more of a loose, modern, energetic system, energetic coach to play for, if you will. Is energetic even the right word for Lane Kiffin? I don't know. I guess hip, whatever. It was the cool move. It was the trendy move. And Ole Miss goes out there and they sign the best class on paper so far. It's a damn good class. I also happen to think that Walter Nolan might be a little bit overrated with his 5-star, not because of his talent, because of I think he's probably going to want to go pro after this year, just based on knowing Walter Nolan, watching him for a few years. I think he's going to be solid there. I think he's going to be a great player there. But I think it's a 1-year deal, so I don't know if that equates to a 5-star in recruiting, and that may buff up their numbers a little bit. But, I mean, just the dudes that they got. Chris Paul Jr. is a guy that I wanted A&M to get. Antoine Wells was an amazing receiver at South Carolina. I'm not going to say the name, but Princely Yu out of Florida was a guy that I hoped would follow Jay Bateman to A&M or follow Sean Spencer to A&M. They end up getting all those guys, plus our guy in Walter Nolan. So, I don't know, man. I hate to compliment these teams that I hate so dearly and so much and so truly. But they did a great job. So just a couple ways to use the portal. Now, of course, there are a bunch of classes that I didn't mention. These are all really good classes. Any class in this top 10 is a good transfer portal class. But I think those top 5 are really, really good examples of the way the portal is best utilized. You either stack talent, you fill gaps, or you replace players from coaching turnover. So my top 5, in order, number 5, I have Florida State. I love their class. And obviously, this entire top 5 is solid. It's nails. It's a great top 5. But I'm going to order it at the very top. These are all classes that everyone should be happy with. You should not be mad if you're ranked 5 in this list. But I have Florida State at rank 5 because I don't know if DJ Uiagalelei is the guy to take them to the promised land. Maybe the best available for them. Maybe he gives you a chance. But I don't know if he moves the needle for the team. They did, however, address every need, and they're looking much, much better going into next year than they would have if they didn't sign a class like this. At number 4, I have A&M. I think A&M had a great, great class. Much better than even I expected as an extremely biased and passionate A&M fan. I didn't expect the second-rated portal class by 247 rankings. I didn't expect to get a Nick Scorton or a Will Lee or a Des Ricks. I mean, the precedent was set by Jimbo, who was reluctant to use the portal over the last couple of years. We wished he would have, especially at the corner position. But for A&M to go out and get 23 guys in December and early January, the outlook for next year is already increasing for my Aggies. I mean, it feels really good. You have a Nick Scorton, you have a Des Ricks. Those guys kind of highlight the class. But then you bring in so many experienced guys with a lot of productivity under their college football resumes. I feel much better going into next year than I did before. So A&M at number 4. The third-rated class, I'm going to put Ole Miss there. I love Ole Miss's class. The reason I'm not putting them top 2 is because I don't know if they are really addressing needs. They're just kind of buffing up their roster, which is really good. They got some badass players in the portal. But I think my top 2, and I'm just going to make it a tie between Ohio State and Texas, I think that's the way the portal should be used if you're in a good place in your program. 10 or fewer guys that can plug and play right away or have immediate paths to productivity, and they're high-level players. I think Texas and Ohio State, I think they won the portal this year. I'm just going to be straight up. I think Ohio State went out there and just went star hunting, and they got the 2 best players in the portal probably in Caleb Downs and Sayin, the young quarterback, the number 1 rated quarterback in the 2023 class. I mean, and they got Howard out of Kansas State, who could be their starting quarterback next year, or at least push Brown or whoever it might be to become a better quarterback. I mean, if you don't have needs, those are the guys you want to get. And then Texas obviously addressing immediate needs at receiver and on the defensive line and at safety. So, guys, I know it sucks to give Texas and Ohio State and Ole Miss credit, but they're playing the game, man. They're playing the game the way it's supposed to be played. I think Texas A&M is right there to contend at that highest level of the portal for years to come, just based on Mike Elko's short track record, how well he's been doing. But I do give the slight benefit to the teams that are established and using the portal kind of in that cruising manner. They're already built. They're ready to go. Add players and keep moving. Texas A&M is using it in a great way, but they're starting over. So, guys, do you agree with my top 5? Do you like the portal? Is this something that you can get used to? I don't think we're closing Pandora's box, guys. I think we may see some more regulations in the future. I don't know if transferring multiple times is great for players. I don't know if the window in which you transfer is great for the current schedule of college football where everything lands in December. I don't think the schedule of transfer portal lining up right when the playoff is going to be happening in years to come is great for the sport. I think there's some adjustment to be made there. But I do think players should have the opportunity to move. When the coaches leave, when you don't have playing time, I just don't like it when a random player up and leaves when they've been having good productivity, when they're going to go chase an NIL deal. That sucks to me. But guys, that's the world we live in. That's the transfer portal, and that's college football these days. So give me your top 5 portal classes. I'm sure many of you Aggies are you angry that I didn't put A&M number 1? I think A&M did as good as they could. I just don't think that they're in a position to just grab and go. I think they needed to fill the roster, and they did just that. That's my list. I'm sticking to it. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys Thursday at 8 p.m.